Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to the Positive Psychology Hour, a series that we do in partnership with Whole Being Institute. My name is Caroline Colas. I'm the Senior Director of Health and Wellness at the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan. And it occurred to me that I should probably put in on my microphone so you can hear me a little bit better.
Okay. See, is that better? I'm getting a thumbs up. Okay. Today on the Positive Psychology Hour, our topic is making positive psychology work for you in everyday life with our very own Dr. Sherry Kelly. The power of positive thinking has been re-energized in the 21st century through research on the science of happiness. How do we apply what science tells us? How do we kickstart positive change in real life in real time? What evidence-based positive psychology strategies can help us successfully manage stress and uncertainty as we emerge from the COVID pandemic? Clinical psychologist Sherry Schuyler Kelly is my guest today, and she is going to provide us with an entertaining and energizing overview of the science and real-life strategies of positive psychology. We're going to discover her simple strategies to find positivity in even complex situations. Now, I know many of you have heard Dr. Kelly speak before. She's a clinical psychologist and a neuropsychologist with more than 30 years of experience in the field of child development and health psychology. And she earned her doctorate in health psychology from Yeshiva University as a former National Institutes of Health and National Cancer Institute fellow and a psycho-oncology and neuropsychology. So she's based both in West Hartford, Connecticut and in Florida, and she's best known for her research with teens and young adults on resilience, hope, and cancer survivorship. And she's the founder of something called Positivity Teens, which offers workshops for students, parents, educators on the impact of digital technology on the developing brain. Now, this is kind of a two-part series today because Dr. Kelly's going to be speaking to us, and then on Thursday, we're in for a real treat, so please sign back on. Mega is in the house, and she is going to be joining us. And Mega, are you here? Are you still here? I know that she was going to pop on, and I can tell you, I think she has to stop. She had to pop off to get prepared. But I want to tell you a little bit about what she's going to be doing so that you can come and experience that as well. She's going to be talking about remembering the body and positive psychology. So her focus is going to be somewhat taking what Sherry is saying today and then exploring how our bodies can help us utilize positive psychology teachings through joy-filled calming movement practices. And she hinted at when she was on earlier that she's been playing with Broadway. Now that Broadway's back, she has been really excited about using Broadway tunes, and she said, can I add some of that on Thursday? And you know what I said? Yeah, exactly, Leslie, right? Why not? So let's take a moment before we get started and just put it on gallery view if you would. I'll take off my spotlight here for a moment. And I welcome you to just take a moment to look at each other. And even at the names, if people have their cameras off, we haven't been together a lot this fall. There were so many Jewish holidays. And just take a moment to just kind of beam some positivity to each other and really say, you know, I wish you well. I wish you health and happiness, yes, Vance, and good fortune and good health. And just really, exactly, Nancy, exactly, just send out that love energy. And I love Vance put a little reaction. And if you want to put, your reactions are down at the bottom. You can put a heart in there. Yeah, Rachel and Leslie and Joanne and stuff like that. So now let me introduce you to bring on the screen our host or our co-host.
Hi there.
Yeah, and I'm enabling the live transcription, and then I'm just going to come on. And Sherry, you did an event for the JCC recently on stress in the brain.
Yes, I did. It was wonderful. It was on really how does stress work in your brain? What's the purpose of stress? How to harness the energy of stress? And, why do we get stressed? So it was really informative, and there's a recording of it. I don't know if it's available to everyone that might be interested or how they might access it,
Yeah,
but
you might
really,
be able to include that in the recordings this week if people are interested. Let me know if you can just raise your hands if you're interested in hearing that talk. Oh, yeah, okay. I will let Joelle know. And the reason I'm saying that is that it seems like this is a kind of a stressful time. And what I'm looking forward to in your conversation is when we react to stress, and I don't mean the positive kind of stress, I mean the negative stress, our brain kind of comes inward and our options kind of narrow. And I'm hoping that what I experience with my positive psychology practice is that it helps me broaden, it helps me expand my view, it helps me remember that, the moment that I'm feeling stressed is not the only moment there is. And so
that's true.
yeah, I was thinking that what we could do, and I don't know if you have, sometimes you read from Joan Borysenko, if you
Mhm.
have a moment to, are you going to start us off with a mindful moment
I'm
before
going
we
to start
begin?
you out with a mindful moment. And
Fantastic.
before I do that, I'm stressed because our dear friend Mega got bumped off the webinar and is trying to get back on and having a hard time. So if you can help her, that'd be really great.
Sure,
Okay.
I can see if I can send her something.
So I'm going to give you my own mantra that I gained at Kripalu about 30 years ago from one of the instructors there, the wonderful Kripalu in Lenox, Massachusetts. And the yoga instructor taught us how to manage stress in a unique way. And that is this: when you're feeling stressed out, I want you to take a deep breath and use the stop method, which is from my dear friend Karen, who might be on here today. S is stop what you're doing. T is take a breath. O is observe. Observe your feelings. And I add a twist to this. I want you to observe what you're resisting, because oftentimes stress is resistance to what is. You might be stressed out because you're resisting a challenge, resisting a confrontation you don't want to have, resisting something negative you don't want to face, resisting growth, resisting taking a risk. So in that observation mode, I want you to just observe what you might be resisting, because oftentimes stress is stemming from resistance. And then the P in stop is proceed. So I hope that that is something practical that you can take with you today on your journey. How's that, Caroline?
Amazing. That's perfect.
Something
And I just
practical.
sent Mega the link, so hopefully she'll be able to pop back on.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. It's such a gift to be here today with everyone. I am saying hello. I hope my friends from overseas are joining us today. My dear friend, David Charlton from Meaningful Paths in the United Kingdom. I hope he's able to hop on today, and I hope Mega's trying to get back. It is an honor to be here. And we're talking today about really one of, I think, the most important topics that we can discuss is, how do we enact change in our lives? How can we be more positive and happy? We hear a lot of talk. We hear a lot of chatter about things we're supposed to do, but how do we actually put them to work for us in our everyday life in a variety of different situations? And I know when I gave my stress talk last week, people said, well, yeah, the theory's fine, but how do I make it work? And that's what I love to bring to people. So I'm going to bring that to you today. Okay. So I think, Carolyn, do you let me share my screen?
Yes, you can share
Yes.
it.
All right. Hold on, everybody
We
in
can see it.
TV land. We're going to go. All right. So if I pop out, I'm going to say I'm sorry, but I'm going to go. So how do we make it work in everyday life? Okay. well, oops, let's just see. Oh, now I'm just trying to do it. All right. Now, oh, there you go. So this is what I want you all to take away today in 15 minutes from now. I want you to understand the key concepts of positive psychology. I want you to understand the connection between positive psychology and happiness. What's the evidence? Because there is a lot of it. How do you use positive psychology strategies in communication with each other, in your family life, work life? How do you use it in problem solving and coping? We already used one today, just already, how to think about stress. How do we think about challenges, or when we don't feel really happy, what are we resisting? And why should we be concerned? Why am I talking about happiness and positive psychology? We have a real mental health crisis in the world, not just in America, but these are some of the latest statistics that have been fueled by COVID in terms of fueling emotional distress in our society. 1 in 4 adults today has some type of mental health disorder that they're struggling with. The 2 most common are depression, of course, and anxiety. Since COVID, there's been a 90% increase in depression and anxiety symptoms reported among adults and young people. Ironically, less than half of us get any kind of treatment. Some of that's due to limitations in our healthcare programs that we've signed up for, or insurance. We have a huge problem of access to care, especially access to mental health care. And youth mental health has worsened during COVID because of isolation, being out of school, changes in the structure and their routines that help them grow and develop into adults. So we're going to talk about positive psychology today. And what is it? Well, Martin Seligman, Dr. Martin Seligman, the famous psychologist from University of Pennsylvania, and really the father of positive psychology, wrote this, that the aim of positive psychology is to catalyze a change in psychology from a preoccupation only with repairing the worst things in life to also building the best qualities in life. Okay, so instead of focusing on what's wrong or what negative might have happened to you, positive psychology is trying to capitalize on what's good about your strengths. What strengths do you have? What qualities do you have that are unique, that are powerful, that you can grow on? What works, not just what's wrong. So positive psychology is basically the study of what makes life worth living. Study of the strengths and virtues that enable us as individuals, together as communities. And it's founded on the belief that people want to lead meaningful and fulfilling lives. And to do that, you need to focus on the positive. What's good? What's right? What works? What can enact positive change? What can make meaning and purpose in our life? So to cultivate what's the best within each of us. And then to discover and promote factors that allow people to thrive, not just survive. Well, this might be interesting to you. Positivity is predictive of better health and better outcomes and wellness. So that means that when we do studies, when psychologists do studies and psychiatrists and public health researchers do studies, they found this, that the level of optimism people possess is actually predictive of well-being, not only mental health. So their overall health and well-being. So if you're positive, you're going to be more likely also to take better care of yourself, engage in behaviors that mitigate or buffer stress and symptoms that might make us go down an unhealthy path. Does that make sense? That we are, better able to take care of us, that we have longevity. Positive people live longer. Okay. Positive beliefs and self-efficacy about aging is predictive of that outcome. So if you have a positive belief system about aging healthy and growing older in a healthy way with well-being, you're most likely going to have more positive outcomes as you age. And the opposite is also true. Negative thinking is linked to greater cognitive decline and decline in health as we age. So Martin Seligman thought this, that your habits of thinking not need be forever. You can change your thinking. You can change negative thoughts into positive ones. You have more power than you think. And one of the most significant findings in psychology has been that individuals can choose the way they think. So I just want to make a little disclaimer. This is not about toxic positivity, okay? I don't want people to think that, you can't have negative thoughts, that you can control your feelings. You can't. You can control your reactions to feelings, but hard times happens, feelings happen. It's a survival mechanism. Pain is what enables us to survive, actually. And listening to those alarm bells is an important message for you. So I don't want, anyone to think that I'm invalidating the negativity. I'm not. I want you to value that and understand it, but also give you the tools to move on with it. So I hope that makes sense. So this is interesting. Does positivity work? Well, check this out. This is neuroimaging of the brain with a functional MRI. And this is a study that was done of motivational techniques, okay? And if you look at the scan on the left, you'll see a lot of blue, okay? And that brain was scanned where they used very negative coaching techniques for compliance, okay? So, fixing what's wrong, addressing what's wrong. Let's bolster up the areas that are the weak chain in us, okay? The weakest link, all right? Instead of focusing on positive approaches to motivating people at work, and this had to do with work, managers, coaches, teachers, okay? So this had to do with working on the strengths. So the positive, compassionate style of motivation is on the right. You see that? Okay. And that's associated with big picture thinking and stress regulation. All right. Do you think that's interesting? I do. I thought this was a really interesting study. So there's neural networks that are involved in negativity. And again, this goes back to how we're wired, how we evolved over millennia as people, how we survived, and that fight or flight system that we have in each other to help us survive, right? We had to be on the lookout for that saber-toothed tiger, tens of thousands of years ago, right? Well, now our saber-toothed tiger could be a boss. It could be paying your taxes. It could be any number of stressors that we've got. Neural networks store memory. And our brains are sort of like honed in for negativity. Okay, we have neural networks of caution, depression, trauma, anxiety. So can your cognition, visualization, behaviors, responses change neural networks? Yes, they can. That's what we saw in that fMRI. So regions of the brain work to take in information, and then we figure out what action we're going to take. So the purpose of putting this up here, which is to show you some of the neural networks that are involved in figuring out how we are going to respond to certain stressors, okay? And how we're going to figure out what we're going to do. And a lot of the figuring out what action to take takes place in the prefrontal cortex, and that's the 2 and 3 part of the brain, okay? And that gets us ready to make a decision. That decision's ultimately up to you, however. You have more power than you realize over your mindset, over your neural networks. So getting back to, what we're fighting against a neural network that is really developed to be on high alert for negativity as a survival mechanism. So I love this by Rick Hanson. In effect, the brain is like Velcro for negative experiences, but Teflon for positive ones. So we're more tuned into the negative, what can hurt us, what to be on the lookout for. And we take for granted the positive coding. And we shouldn't take that for granted. So how do we fix this? All right. So what should our response repertoire be? Okay. So do you have a fixed mindset? And that's a negative mindset. It's all or nothing. I want you to think about that. Are we aware of what triggers our fixed mindset or negative reactivity? Do you believe that our basic qualities are rigid and fixed? Is it all or nothing, win or lose? Negativity in a fixed mindset can have a paralyzing impact on your life. It causes you to see things as risky or life as a series of tests to maintain our status. Are you engaging in that? Is it safer for you not to take risks? Do you feel like it's just worth not trying? Are you not learning from failures? All right, well, this is one of the problems. If you engage in the same old thinking, you're going to get the same old results, right? So let's shift our mindset. So we can shift the perception of our mindset by looking at things in a different way. I'm not trying to ignore the negativity. I'm not trying to have that toxic positivity. I am trying to encourage you to change your perspective. And this is what Dan Tomasulo, the great positive psychologist, says. We are trying to balance the negative and positive with our perspective on life. So setting goals is easy. Trying to be positive, making that decision, I want to be more positive, is easy. How do you actually do it? Goals involve behavior change. You have to change your behaviors. And you have to first think about what is in the way of changing your behavior. When do you feel like you put the brakes on to change your behavior, right? So this is the first exercise I'd like you to do to change your behavior and your thought process. Try saying nothing negative for 24 hours straight and watch your life change. How do you develop positive thinking? I put this book up here for you. This is a great book by Norman Doidge, The Brain That Changes Itself. It's really an inspiring read. It gets into more of the business of how you can change your mindset and change your way of thinking to be more positive. But here's some helpful insights right now. Positive thinking is not something you randomly do. It's not a passive exercise. You actually have to think about it and practice it every day, like exercising every day. Making it a daily habit will help you create a positive thinking mindset that will allow you to avoid potentially negative results. Help you actually make, it will help you make challenging situations more positive, help you get more mastery over situations, and it will help you resolve dilemmas quickly and easy. So here are 3 things I want you to do. This is the second exercise now. Hope you're writing this down, okay? Cultivate, cope, and commit. These are the 3 C's for you. Cultivate the positive emotions, experiences, values, strengths, expectations, and relationships. The second C is cope. Cope effectively with the negative. So cope effectively with painful emotions, experiences, challenges, stress, and disappointment. Now you might ask, Sherry, how do you do that? I know some of you are thinking that. So how do you cope more positively? One way is to use that STOP method. Okay, so let's, in your mind's eye, think about it. Think about what you might be resisting. Think about the challenge you might be trying to avoid. Think about the response set that might get you into trouble. When you're resisting it, are you avoidant? Do you run away? Do you placate people? Do you lie to yourself? Say, oh, I'm not going to deal with this right now. Do you self-medicate maybe? I'll just eat, some chocolate and think about it later. Or maybe I'll just have a drink and that'll make me feel better. Is it avoiding by spending a lot of time online or watching, too much TV? So think about how you're coping and how you might cope more effectively with painful emotions. Maybe you need to cope by getting social support or talking it out with someone. And in the immediacy, cope by thinking about what you're resisting and think about a positive way you could react differently if you're overwhelmed. And by that, I'll give you an example. Maybe you're overwhelmed and don't have an answer or don't want to get into argument and you feel like screaming, you feel like acting out. Take a breath and just give yourself a minute. And you can say, you know what? I don't want to respond right now. Let me call you back. Let me take a break. Let me think on that. Let me process what you just said. I'm hearing you and I need to process what you just said. Before the situation occurs, you can also anticipate how you want to cope. That's heavy stuff. I talk about that a lot in my other webinar on shooting PAR, prepare, accommodate, and refrain for stress. Then the last C is commit. Commit to personally meaningful goals and take sustained action towards achieving them. So think about what your meaningful goals are in life. Maybe it's trying to set an example for your kids. Maybe it's trying to be a more positive partner in a relationship or a more positive supervisor or leader at work or a more positive caregiver. Understand what your bigger goals are and how your everyday actions can tie into those. So what can we control? Well, we can't control everything that happens, obviously, but we can control what we do, our behavior, what we think, right? And what we respond to, what we process from the emotion. We can't always control our feelings, but we can sort of process, well, how do we want to think about this situation? How do we want to act on it? How do we want to use a perspective? Maybe I lost, okay, but I tried. Or maybe I didn't get that promotion, but I did have my say and I did express myself effectively to my boss. So that's the cognitive triangle, and realize what you do have control over. And, calculate the significance of that, of how much you do have control over. So one of the things that Mega's going to talk about on Thursday is how she incorporates positive psychology in body work and in physicality. I love these two really platforms of positivity developed by the Whole Being Institute. And they're our wonderful partner with the JCC. I'm a proud alum of a few courses at Whole Being Institute, and I can tell you it's changed my life. In order to have a happy and fulfilling life, all the happiness research out there points to these 5 pillars, in which we, WBI calls SPIRE, SPIRE. I really focus on the I and R today, which is the intellectual and relationship part of our lives. But you should have SPIRE in your life every day, all right, to promote happiness and well-being. S stands for spiritual. P stands for physical health and well-being. The I is intellectual growth, intellectual stimulation. R is relational. Your relationship should be positive. How are you growing with others? Nurturing your relationships, because support's so important in well-being. And then E is the emotional growth that you will have. And when we talk about using positivity in everyday life and exacting change, the way that you actually make change in your life is with this rubric: change. Clarify your expectations, clarify what your goals are for change. H, hope. Okay, what do you hope to get out of the change? Explore your strengths and resources that are hopeful and fuel your optimism to make your change in your life. A is activate. Actually take behavioral action and do small steps that make changes in your life every day. So you see positive immediate action. And N is navigating the change. Create an adaptable big picture map of the of the growth you want to achieve and your goals. I actually make goal maps with my clients and on what steps you need to take to achieve your goals. And G is the go for it. Make rapid, substantial progress through small achievements. And E is expand on your growth, broaden and build for resilience, expand on what achievements you've had to help you reach higher. So I'm going to stop right now and open it up for questions and comments. Anybody have questions or comments as we are in the half-hour point?
Yeah, Sherry, can you talk a little bit more about things we can control, especially clarifying the relationship of emotions happen,
Yes.
but we can choose how we respond with them? And
Yes.
just a little bit more about like when an emotion comes, how long it lasts, how we can ride that wave. Is it for you like surfing in the ocean, and then how to respond to it? So we have some strategies there.
Yes, I love the ride the wave analogy. You know, sometimes you just can't fight against that wave of negativity or a challenge or a stressor in your life. You can't control it. And when you do that, you ride that wave, you go with it. But that's not to say to be defeatist and be overcome by the wave of a challenge. I think I said this earlier, I'm going to reiterate it. It's really important to know that emotions aren't good or bad. Please stop judging your emotions. And I think that's the first step. Emotions are like alarm bells. There are signals telling us that something's wrong, or that something's not fitting right, or that you have to take action, or that you have to protect yourself, or that something's no longer working. You can decide, you know, what those alarm bells are telling you. So I think when you first feel a wave of disappointment, loss, grief, anger, emotions, realize that emotions are not good or bad. So please stop judging yourself for having them. And second step is to try to figure out, what is this emotion trying to tell me? Is it a past wound or insecurity? Is it triggering memories of being put down or earlier failures? Because that happens. And then I also want you to think, you know, if it's an emotion, let's just take anger, for example. And Carolyn, you've heard me and you've seen, I do a whole thing on anger. I should do that again for the JCC on what's anger. Anger is like an iceberg. And I tell people, you know, actually, you can actually draw an iceberg, and that's anger. And what's beneath the surface of anger? And that's one cognitive strategy to cope with it. What's underneath that surface? Is it fear? Is the anger really stemming from resentment, fear, jealousy, disappointment, insecurity, embarrassment? So that's another step in coping and understanding emotions. And then finally, I like to play a game with emotions called the what, not, why game. And this is really a great thing to teach your kids too. Instead of harping on or fixating on, why do I feel so sad? Okay. Think about instead, what do these times I feel so sad have in common? What is this time of sadness telling me? What could I do that might make me feel better right now? What might I be able to do when I feel sad? That's a positive way of coping. You know, instead of also, you know, thinking about, why do I feel so anxious? What do these times have in common that I feel anxious in? What might I do to get out of that? What is something that might feel good right now? Does that make sense?
Yes, and we had a question in the chat. If you responded poorly because you didn't check yourself, what action should you take, if any, with the others involved who may have received the brunt of your harsh emotions?
I think it's really useful to forgive yourself and to ask others to forgive you. Own it. Because if you hide from it and try to avoid it, you're going to make a bigger mess for yourself. you're going to, make situations where there might be inauthenticity involved or being untrue. So I think the best way out of a stressful situation is through it and own it. And you can simply say in a calm way, hey, I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I reacted that way. I was overwhelmed. I'm not giving excuses, but I am giving you an apology. You mean a lot to me. Be authentic.
Yeah, and could talk that a little bit more about the power of owning it. I mean, some people, we talk about like that idea of being right, right? Would you rather be right or
Well,
would you
then you
rather be
think
connected?
about that and you think, let's go again underneath the surface. Why do you need to be right? Why do you need to be right?
Right. Well, so many arguments seem to stem for like, well, what did you say and what did I say versus,
Well, I mean,
as you
I
said,
think then
what is underneath?
here you go. And let's get back to what we were talking about a couple slides ago. We got to get to the goal. What's the goal? So if we go in the circular fight, like Tom and Jerry in the cartoon, you're never going to get to the common goal. And
Someone was saying, Elaine was saying, lose ego. Oh, and
you also need some ego to be authentic and say, I'm sorry and I want to work with you and you mean a lot to me. So some of the answers are actually in some slides going forward. So I'm going to
great.
All right.
And I just wanted to let you know that, but perhaps bad if interferes with sleep, putting conscious thoughts into place is not possible as it's times during the day when we are fully awake. So that's an interesting question, which is, and I'm sure maybe it's in the slide deck, is like, we go to bed and then some of these things surface, right? And they can wake us up.
Oh, absolutely. And you can perseverate on them. And that's, and people with anxiety do that. Absolutely. And that's, when you need to ask yourself, why am I doing this to myself? Is it self-punishing behavior? No. And again, positive psychology moves forward instead of looking back all the time and thinking about what you did wrong, what you should have done. It's moving forward into thinking, what have I learned about this and how am I going to enact change and act differently? And what are my goals?
Beautiful.
Okay.
I know you have some more slides.
Let's see. So yeah. So hold on a second. So I love, this is by Linda Wallace, who is a WBI, just brilliant coach and teacher at Holbein Institute. This is her care response. So this is what you do. Oh, this is relevant to what that great question was. Use the care response. I hope you guys are taking notes. C, catch yourself. Notice when you're engaging in negative thought or critical self-talk. A, acknowledge it, own it, recognize the pain that the negativity and self-criticism is causing. And really, it's the first step is that C, catch yourself. And now that I've taught you to do this, I really hope you will do it. R is redo it. Speak gently to your inner critic and redirect your thoughts to positive reframing. Okay, and by that I mean, okay, be that kind inner voice and say, you know what, I learned from this. Okay, it didn't turn out the way I wanted, but I'm a better person for it. I learned from this experience. I may have made this new connection, or I may have learned something about myself. And then E, encourage. Replace the critical self-talk with supportive self-talk. Be your own wise and caring friend. Care. Does everybody have this? So I know really this is a very practical strategy. And if you practice this, you're going to figure out how many times a day you're catching yourself in critical self-talk or negativity. It's around us. We live in a world that is cynical and filled with a lot of negativity. It's all over us. So you need to counteract that with positivity. So catch yourself. Do you have a growth mindset instead of that fixed negative mindset? So again, catch yourself, recognize and label the mindset. I just engaged in a negative mindset. How can I engage in a positive one? Are you willing to risk and grow? Are you willing to work through frustration and doubt? If so, you've got a growth mindset. And do you believe that you can develop beyond your basic abilities and learn to do things that you've not yet done? And are you willing to recognize your own personal growth and learning? If someone else isn't validating that, then you need to validate that within you. And prepare to be proactive, not reactive to situations. That's a big one. So gratitude is one of the gifts we can give ourselves. It actually can change the chemistry of your brain. There's been studies on this. Doing gratitude practice, whether it's writing 3 things down a day that you're grateful for, or telling someone you're grateful for their friendship, grateful for their support, grateful for their lessons that they share with you. Acknowledge your blessings, acknowledge your strengths, appreciate your support. Gratitude journaling is something that is a really nice habit to do at night. When you're feeling something sad or negative, try thinking of 3 things that you're grateful for and see what happens, see how you feel. I love this by Alan Cohn. Appreciation is the highest form of prayer. So as I was talking to you before, I love moving from why to what. Why me to what now? Why do I feel so sad? What do those, to what? What do those times have in common where I feel so sad? Moving from why do I feel so depressed to what? What could I do that might make me feel good right now? This is part of what we call in positive psychology and cognitive psychology, behavioral activation. So realize that happiness arises from wishing others to be happy, not just yourself. You do not live in a vacuum. There's a part of the brain that is in the anterior cingulate that is a part of the brain where it processes gratitude and also it practices appreciation and charity. And it's very much tied or next door to relationships. I thought this research was fascinating, and it's in one of my other talks. Carolyn, you've seen that MRI picture before. So we know this, that happiness is related to relationships. You don't live on an island. Invest in your happiness, not by buying things, but by teaching and sharing. For some reason, we live in a society that makes us think that the more we acquire, the better we'll feel. And that's just not true. Release people in your life who do not make you happy. Unhook these people who are negative. And that's a tough thing to do. You might not be able to forgive them, but try to unhook them so they don't bring you down. So what are some strategies that, again, we can model positivity for other people at home, in the workplace? Validate emotions of others and yourself. Understand that you cannot always fix or solve it all. I want to talk to you about this a little bit. In business, there's something called like the dead rat theory. And this happens in management. Some people come to us with problems or complaints or issues, not because they expect us to fix it, but it's a way to bond or a way to get attention or emotional closeness or to have help in working together. It doesn't necessarily mean they want you to fix it or solve it. If they're sharing something with you, that's a problem. Okay. Other ways to think about it is this thought joyful or useful to me? So if you have a negative thought or if someone says something negative, or if you're about to say something negative in a reaction, ask yourself, stop yourself. Is this thought joyful or useful? If not, encourage moving on from a place of negativity or hurt. And reframe the negative into insightful thinking. Okay, so that would be, I'm glad you shared that with me. I never thought of it that way. I want to process this with you. I want to think about this. Go to the what. What do those times have in common? What is it that sets us up for that situation? What can we do about that? What can we change? When you stop asking people to also engage in why conversations and move from the what, you're moving forward instead of miring in the muck. And at work, just remember, you can be anything doesn't mean you have to be everything. Okay, that's a really important distinction. Okay. All right. So, let's talk about some really important pillars to build upon in your life for positivity. Make a daily journal of 3 things that went well in your life today, or 3 things you're grateful for, what you did to make them happen. So not just what went well, but things that you did to make them happen, because that will help you acknowledge strengths and value yourself. Remember to change the negative bias into focusing on positive growth and growth mindset instead of negative mindset or fixed mindset. Catch yourself in negativity. Third is choose to remember that your emotions are neither good or bad, but alerts or alarm bells. They're trying to tell you something. Usually it's about fear, danger, change that you have to be on the lookout for. It also is an opportunity for growth. Growth can be very uncomfortable. Change can be uncomfortable. But if you don't change, you do not grow. And then lastly, really important pillar, explore and manage expectations. This is a big one because oftentimes you have expectations that might be very different from what the reality can deliver. Your expectations of things might be very different from how life behaves. And understanding that difference between expectations of what you wanted to have happen and what really happened, that difference is where happiness can lie, or happiness can be elusive. So, understand what your expectations are and what the expectations are of others, particularly in relationships or at work. And that will help you make positive changes in your life, I promise you. So lastly, I will tell you this. This is Kripalu, by the way, in Lenox. If you've been there, this is a beautiful place. Find a pebble of positivity in every situation, and I promise you, a mountain of possibilities will emerge on your horizon, okay? All right, so that is it. You guys want to talk?
Yeah, we have some questions. Joy was asking if you could give a concrete example, and I was thinking about if you can explore a little bit or explain a little bit about expectations.
Oh,
How
yeah.
to meet expectations.
Okay. So, it's about managing your expectations and understanding what you expect. Okay. So I'll give you one concrete example. I had, if you're, working with somebody, let's say in an office or virtually, and let's say you're working, with a boss, and the boss might have expectations about you, taking on more responsibility to do the books, and you want to take on more responsibility to be creative. And you might be thinking that the way for you to make the boss happy and for you to get ahead and get a raise is to show your creativity. And she might be thinking her expectations of you are to spend less time being creative and more time doing the books. And that different in expectations is going to cause a lot of stress in your working relationship. Let's talk about, your personal relationship at home. Okay. You might have expectations of your partner of, wanting to be there for you and just listen to you vent when you get home. Your partner's expectation might be very different of what he wants to do when he gets home or she gets home, which might be, I just want to veg on the couch and, have a nice tea and have some quiet and not hear complaining. They may, I don't want to hear venting. I just want some quiet for a while. Those are two other expectations. Another expectation in relationship. Maybe you expect a relationship with someone, to be more significant. And the other person's expectation is to be more casual and less significant. The difference in expectations can cause strife. And not knowing what the other person's expectations are is causing you stress. So those are just three different areas of expectation. And manage expectations. Are your expectations unrealistic? Are you expecting too much of someone else? Are you expecting too much of yourself? So knowing your expectations, exploring expectations is so important. And I actually have a talk about this for aging with aging parents, Caroline, where I talk about, what are some ways to cope with your aging parents? And expectations is a wonderful way to open up the conversation about changes in lifestyle as we age. Talking about expectations that they have for themselves as they age and what our expectations are of our parents as they age. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And I think that that's a great example. I'm just going to stop sharing the screen for a moment so that we can see you, especially if we use that example of aging parents, for example. As for some people get stronger and I don't want to stronger and more vital as they get older and they're doing a little bit less. And for others, sometimes there's an illness or there's an injury or that kind of thing. So managing when there is change, and it reminds me of what Tal Ben-Shahar said about positive psychology. Positive psychology is about reality, 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 and, right? So it's being able to look at what are we looking at now and what is strong.
So, Mo Gadot, who was the ex-chief business officer of Google X, and he's very involved in positive psychology, has an happiness equation. And the happiness equation is this, that happiness equals or is greater than your expectations minus the way life behaved. So let that sink in. So sometimes our unhappiness arrives from a difference in expectations or the difference between what our expectations were and what happened. And
I was thinking about all of our college students and people that are applying for college, right?
I've got one. I've got one exactly. Myself.
And the expectations of, I was going to go to this school, or, I was going to get this scholarship, or, my future was going to be about this. And now it's that opportunity has evaporated.
Yes. Yes.
And then how that change in expectation is also an opportunity to grow.
Yes. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I had that happen. Without getting too personal, my daughter worked for 10 years in a sport, and due to COVID and lack of recruiting opportunities and not being able to, at her school, compete for almost 2 seasons, she is not going to be the recruited athlete she thought she was going to be. And scholarships dried up. There's no scholarship or athletic scholarship. And so it was a big disappointment. And so we had to talk about, what the expectations were, and that she's more than the sport. She's more than just an athlete. And with kids, you're more than your expectations. You know, you're not just what your expectations are, you're more than what school you got into or what grade you got or what job you're going to be. And, you know, think about the larger expectations of going to college. And that I tell kids, you're not going to college, you're going to people. How's that? And
Wow,
that shifts their
say more
thinking.
about that.
That it's thinking, right? Yeah, because you're going to people. So choose your college or expect out of college, you know, your expectation should be in line with what kind of a community am I going to go to? How do I want to be involved in that community? You know, college is a community of people. It's not just buildings with ivy on it. You know, you're sending your student to people, not just to college. So be very thoughtful about the kind of college you want to go to or the college you want to send your kids to, because, you know, expectations will very much revolve around the community, not just the courses.
Beautiful. Can we switch back to parents again and aging
Yes.
parents?
Yeah.
It would be helpful to know this for ourselves with our children, even though we may be healthy and strong. So from the parent point of view of having adult children, saying, you know, what are your expectations of me? And also, what are my expectations of you?
Well, so I have a whole talk on this, which I'd love to do with you guys if you're interested. But
Sure.
one of the things that people ask me is, you know, how do you start this very difficult conversation with our aging parents about their lives as they're getting older and their needs and their inability to engage in certain behaviors or tasks, such as, you know, driving, maybe not being able to live without help, maybe not being able to live in their home. And how do you start that difficult conversation that's not threatening? And one way to start the difficult conversation is to explore expectations and to explore their expectations, explore your parents' expectations, so that you can actually get an idea of what they're thinking, of what their reality is to them, what they want of their future, how they expect to live, how much time they want to spend with you. So explore their goals and expectations as they're aging is a non-threatening and loving way of opening up a very difficult conversation.
Yeah, and I was even thinking about the expectations of grandchildren. Like sometimes the kids might expect, oh, you're going to babysit. And maybe the person doesn't really want to do that.
Well, that's where a lot of problems come in. Okay. So one of the practical ways of deploying positive psychology in everyday life is to explore expectations. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I've just opened up this new way of thinking for you through that. Okay. It's really important. And your example is common. That's true. You know, we expected grandma and grandpa to be there to always babysit, or, you know, the kids might expect, you know, certain things from the parents. So understanding expectations and exploring them is going to really diminish stress in your life. And it's a positive way of addressing real life challenges.
I've even seen that expectation be really challenging for folks who've gotten an illness like cancer, who had the expectation that their family might be there for them, but in actuality, it was more of their friends were there for them. Have you found that with your oncology background, have you found that to be true as well?
Yes, I mean, sometimes, absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up. Yes, because sometimes it's just too close to home and your family's too afraid or too scared to see you in that much pain. Also, the opposite is true. I mean, I've worked with people who don't want their children to see them suffer or in pain, and they take great strides to protect their kids or grandkids. And that's when the support of their friends is so important. And also friends that have been on that journey. And, you know, that's where cancer care specialists come in too.
Yeah. And one final question, because we are at one, but I do want to ask you this. Joanne asks, how do you explore the nuances between expectations and reality? I.e., what if your expectations are not always totally realistic? Or how about this? You know, as I'm aging, I was able to do a lot last year. And this year I noticed that I'm not as physically strong, or maybe there's something going on with my body that I had expectations that I would be able to ride my bike or do more. And suddenly I can't do that. And there's
Right.
that disappointment too.
Right.
There's the emotional part in that in terms of your coping strategy.
Yes. And that is a wonderful example of when you have to realign your expectations, examine them, and discover what's keeping you from doing the things you love. If it is a physical ailment, to get medical attention for it, and determine if you need to readjust the expectations for smaller goals, and deploy the SPIRE model along with it, so you have in your life those key things that will make you feel more whole and make you feel engaged in life. The spirituality, the physical health that you can take care of, physical engagement, exercise, intellectual stimulation, relationships, and then exercise and energy work. It doesn't, you can change the kind of energy and exercise work that you do.
Beautiful. So helpful. I just wanted to, I'm getting a lot of nods and
I
personal
would
messages
love
in
to
the
do,
chat.
I'll come back and do a whole talk on positive aging if you ever want me to.
Well, you know what? We're going to have you back. And everyone, just so you know that one of my dreams has been to have Sherry walk us through the brain. And she is actually going to do that in December. It'll be separate from the Positive Psychology Hour. I will ask Joelle to include her talk that she did for us at the end of September on stress and the brain and how to manage that. And we'll try and keep you informed when Sherry comes back, because it's always just such a plethora of information. And so I feel so stimulated in my brain and in my body and my heart, and not only aspire, but inspired by you.
Well, thank you. And before we go, I have to give a plug for Thursday. Please join the fabulous Mega Thursday for her Power Hour, where she is going to give you embodied positive psychology and make it work in your body. It's that mind-body connection that only Mega can do. She is the biggest ball of sunshine, and we're kind of tag teaming it today. So I dealt with your mind, and she's going to deal with your body.
Excuse me, can I ask you a question? Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
My name is Barbara. This is an absolutely wonderful, important, and helpful program that you have. I'd like to know if there's any possibility, since we're near the end, if I could speak to you just for a couple of minutes privately after this class.
Sure. Barbara, I'm going to ask you, do you have a pen?
Yes.
All right. Can I give my phone number?
Well, before you do that, because I don't think you want to put that on the recording.
So I'm going to,
let's just go ahead and say,
but I will say to you, please visit my website.
I don't have a computer. That's why I'm on the phone.
Barbara, hang on one second.
Hang on.
I appreciate this. We're going to take care of you. Let's just let us stop the recording.
Hang on.
All right.
I will.
But to find out more about my workshops and me, go to mindandheartcoaching.com. That's mind and with the word and heartcoaching.com. Or to find out about work with teens, go to positivateens.com and look for my courses at meaningfulpaths.com. And I'm going to be having some courses on there as well. That's a partner in the United Kingdom, but they're available throughout the world. So, come visit me on my website. You can get my contact information there as well. I'd love to hear from you.
Excellent. Let me stop the recording and then we can continue with Barbara.
Bye,
anybody would like to say, I'll take the spotlights off, and if anybody would like to say anything, please unmute and thank our guest for her amazing.
Bye, it's great seeing everybody. Thanks for joining me today. I'll see you Thursday with Mega.
Yes. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.